This is what we're doing. That's not good. Hey everybody, got my license plate number today. No, that's not good either. See, I'm gonna put the car in the steering wheel in my hand, and that probably looks stupid too, doesn't it? I'm just gonna be like, hey, I'm driving a car. No, all right. I don't know how to open it. Oh. Hey everybody, and welcome back to this year's Carpentober. And this time we're going over a movie about love, loss, friendship, and jealousy. Oh, and a haunted car. That's right. I just rewatched the 1983 Stephen King adaptation, Christine. So, after John Carpenter's The Thing flopped at the box office, I know, right? Universal pulled the plug on Carpenter's adaptation of doing Stephen King's Firestarter, which he really wanted to do. And, well, he needed work. Luckily, producer Richard Kobritz, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, Kobritz, got on the first try. And his friend, I guess, Stephen King, got together and he handed him a couple manuscripts. Kobritz produced the TV miniseries for Salem's Lot, the Tobe Hooper Salem's Lot, that was really, really good. I mean, it was Tobe Hooper, so there you go. So King trusted Kobritz's ideas on what to adapt, so he gave them a copy of Christine and a copy of Cujo. And Kobritz went with Christine because he said Cujo was too silly. He thought the movie about a sentient killer car was less silly than a dog with rabies attacking people. So he chose Christine, bought the rights to the manuscript, and pre-production began before the book was even published. Now, the essential story is about a kind of nerdy kid, Arnie, played by Keith Gordon, who is mostly known for being the main character in Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield, who he finds love, not just with a girl, but with a car. He sees the beauty in the beat-up junker that Christine started out as, and he devotes all of his time and most of his money to make Christine beautiful again. Arnie's best friend, Dennis, played by John Stockwell, who I know from My Science Project. Not mine personally, that's the name of the movie, My Science Project. He's always seen as the good friend. Dennis is always Arnie's good shoulder angel, even after he notices the changes Arnie goes through. The bad changes Arnie goes through, really. He even spends the beginning of the movie trying to talk Arnie out of buying Christine, which he was doing it mainly because she looks like an old junker. He's wasting his money. He's wasting his time. Who knew that it was the right choice for Dennis to do that for Arnie?
I didn't let him. I mean, he wanted the car and he bought it. I tried to talk him out of it, in fact.
And as the car becomes more restored, so does Arnie's confidence. When she's all fixed up, Arnie and Christine could take on the world. The problem is, Christine is a very jealous partner. She was born evil. She killed 2 assembly line workers before she was even leaving the factory. And that kind of sets up the whole idea of Christine being an evil car, which is a little deviation from the book. But we'll get into that in a little bit. Once Arnie finds love in a new girl, Lee, played by Alexandra Paul, who played the Virgin Connie Swale in Dragnet.
Evil bringeth here our queen. She's as pure as she can be, white and clean as driven snow from Orange County. Here we go.
But having a jealous, scorned car has its advantages too. Because Arnie may act cool at this time, but he still gets bullied from back when he was just a little insecure nobody. Earlier in the movie, he gets the bullies in trouble. A couple get probation, one actually gets kicked out of school, and they take their revenge out on Arnie's precious Christine. And they destroy the car with knives, sledgehammers, anything they get to. That one takes a poop on the dashboard, and the next morning, Arnie finds the car demolished, and that's when Christine shows her true self. In one of the coolest scenes in the movie, Christine shows Arnie that they can be unstoppable as the car, demolished as it is, begins repairing itself, as Arnie watches with almost a lust at her power, like he's watching a stripper or just the woman he loves showing themselves to them for the first time.
Okay. Show me.
And that's kind of like this whole underlying story that Arnie really is in love with this car, and it's not an unhealthy love. I mean, it is an unhealthy love, but it's kind of interesting just how he puts his own reflection onto this car, and it kind of like comes back at him at the same time. But after this scene, Arnie is fully seduced by Christine. Going back to the jealousy, Arnie takes Lee to the drive-in, and after seeing how much Arnie lusts over this girl, Christine tries to kill her after Arnie steps out of the car. And it also shows Arnie's trip into this new version of himself, this new angry, vindictive, terrible person, because when she's choking to death, and the car locked the doors and won't let anybody in, a stranger comes and opens the door and gets her out and starts doing the Heimlich, and he's like, get away from her, like he's attacking this guy for helping.
Hey, what the hell are you doing? You get your goddamn hands off her!
It's just showing his change more and more, that he's becoming more erratic, more un-Arnie, I guess. He even lashes out at his parents, who are just trying to protect him, although they kind of do a terrible job at it. They're not the best parents. They're like John Hughes written parents. That's about where they are. But yeah, he becomes like the troubled teenager archetype after this. A lot of swearing. There's a lot of swearing in this movie, and that's because they wanted to go for a hard R, and they just dropped a lot of swears. There's not really a lot of gore in this movie. There's no nudity. It's just swearing. I mean, the terror is there. I mean, there's some really good horror scenes, but it's not a gory horror movie. The only real gore you see is spoiler alert, when Arnie dies and he pulls a piece of glass out of his chest and it's bleeding. I've kind of just gone off the rails here. This is fun. After Christine tries to kill Lee as a peace offering, and kind of protecting Arnie at the same time, Christine takes it upon herself to go after the bullies that not only attacked Arnie, but also totaled her as well. So it's revenge for revenge and revenge. And the car crashes and scrapes and contorts herself to get full vengeance on these kids. The main guy looks like he's in his mid-20s, but, you know, they're kids. And she repairs herself right afterwards. So she's really just in there. Plus the bullies aren't that bad. I mean, one was the geeky kid from Friday the 13th Part 5, I think. The real tall, skinny, red-haired dude. And the guy who gets shocked in the beginning of Ghostbusters. I mean, those are not very formidable bullies. Now, the final act revolves around Dennis and Lee working together to destroy the car and save their friend Arnie. The final showdown ends up killing Arnie. Like I said, spoiler. And Christine faces off against a non-living bulldozer. It's piloted by Dennis himself. Piloted. Do you pilot a bulldozer or do you drive it? Either way. Is it either way or is it one or the other? Let me know in the comments. This bulldozer ultimately crushes Christine, and it was able to be taken to a scrapyard and cubed like they do. But in full horror movie fashion, you see a twitch from the now cubed Plymouth Fury, and the movie ends. Carpenter and screenwriter Bill Phillips diverted from the original novel just a little bit, but in my opinion, it worked a lot better. In the book, Christine was being possessed by its original owner, and his ghost was always in the back seat, and it was, you know, kind of like Arnie's bad devil on the shoulder, changing him into this new bad Arnie. Bad Arnie. Just a bad influence on the little boy. And they changed it into him basically just being more influenced by Christine and the time the car came from, and that's really cool. It was one of the cooler aspects of Gordon's acting in this movie. He actually worked with John Carpenter to have his character start dressing and looking more and more like he came from the 50s. The more he was corrupted, like he shows up with a vest and button-up shirt, and his hair's greased back, and then he wears like just, you know, the white t-shirt. It's really cool. And again, that was Gordon's idea, and Carpenter thought it was a really good idea, and thus we have the visual telling of Arnie's corruption. It's almost like Christine was reliving her prime years, and Gordon's performance in that transition is fantastic. And by the end of the movie, you really forget that Arnie is this little nothing nerdy character. But a lot of that also goes with Stockwell's performance of the character Dennis. He was the school's golden boy, and not in the John Hughes style of, you know, being the nerd-stopping jock. He really took the idea of being, you know, a football player, and he always had good luck and had popular friends, but he was also Arnie's best friend, and he was his loyal friend, and all he wanted to do was protect Arnie and save him from everything bad that was going for him. But him having the best luck and the best things in life put Arnie in Dennis's shadow, which gave Arnie's character a chance to grow and blossom. Like, he was very obscured by Dennis's presence, that when he starts to become the new Arnie, it's a massive, massive change. And in reality, it's kind of subtle how he does it, but because of the chemistry between the two characters, it works really, really well. Now, Christine the car had some character elements as well, as any lead character should. I mean, the movie's called Christine. When the car goes on her killing spree, the windows are all blacked out. This lets the viewer wonder if Christine's doing it alone, or if the corrupted Arnie has gotten to the point where he's just going to murder people with his car. You don't know. I mean, you later find out that who killed who, but when it's happening first, you're just like, wow, you can't tell because all the windows are black. Also, Christine likes to communicate her intentions by sometimes playing a 50s song on the radio. And when she does, it glows green, much like the green glow that made the machines sentient in Stephen King's Maximum Overdrive. I don't know if that's a real connection or not, but I don't know. Or Stephen King just likes the green glow. So does John Carpenter. Bad things always happen in the greenness. Prince of Darkness, The Fog, are two movies that have green in them. The anti James Cameron, nothing's blue, it's all green. That's not true. There's a lot of blue in The Thing, but that's because it was in the snow. But we're not talking about The Thing. We're talking about Christine. And speaking of connections, Arnie's neighborhood was shot in the same neighborhood Carpenter used in his 1978 slasher movie Halloween. And the movie takes place between October of 1978 to January of 1979, the same time. It's the same October of Halloween. So I'm just saying, if there ever was a Carpenter verse, that would be cool. This could be Exhibit A and the evidence for it. As mentioned before, Christine was a 1958 Plymouth Fury, and that specific car King used in the book as well, because he thought that the Fury was overlooked in its time. It needed a legacy. Stuff like the 57 Chevy and the Thunderbird, they all have this legend behind them, but the Plymouth Fury didn't. So he wanted this car to be known, and you can never talk about a Plymouth Fury without thinking of Christine, or you can never think of Christine without thinking of a Plymouth Fury. The conundrum once again shows up. Now, King named the car Christine after Christine Romero, George Romero's wife, whom they all became friends while making Creepshow together. Around 28 Plymouth Furies were used in the movie. Most of them were not Furies, and all but 2 were destroyed in making this movie. The iconic scene where the car restores itself in the garage wasn't even in the original movie. I mean, it was in the original movie. It wasn't in the original shoot. Carpenter originally shot Arnie coming back after his breakdown, and she was all fixed. I guess he thought at the time it wasn't that important to have it show, but after principal photography was completed, Carpenter decided to make this scene to add more emotional effect to it, and it works because it's the scene where they connect as Arnie and Christine. But to simulate the car regenerating itself, hydraulic pumps were installed on the inside of some of the stunt double cars. Some were mocked up in plastic to look more like metal, just to make it pop more like, not like pop like colors, but pop like and pop back in. Some was bent and deformed and just pushed out or sucked in too. These pumps were attached to cables, which, they pulled, and they basically crushed the car and shot it in reverse. And when it comes back, it looks amazing. Now, Christine is John Carpenter hitting on all cylinders. That was a car pun. That was a completely unintentional car pun. I am both sorry, and you are welcome for the gift I just gave you. But yes, this movie is pure John Carpenter. It's a movie that needed to be made, and it's a movie that he needed to make. After the scathing reviews of 1982's The Thing, who's laughing now? Carpenter needed a win, and he won with Christine. Although it didn't get a huge box office reception, It went back to the John Carpenter we knew from Halloween. And again, I cannot stress how much of a cinematic masterpiece The Thing was. I just believe the audiences of 1982 weren't ready for it yet.
But you kids are gonna love it.
Christine was a masterfully assembled, acted, and scored picture. One of the absolute best Stephen King adaptations, and a must for any John Carpenter fan. The score is one of Carpenter's best. It's not as good as Prince of Darkness, which everyone knows is my favorite, but it's right up there. It's right up there with not the Mountains of Madness, In the Mouth of Madness, and it's just a good, haunting but yet driving. Another car pun. Didn't even mean to do that again. This is great. It's a haunting and driving, pumping score, especially when Christine's on the prowl, and it just really keeps you invested in the movie. People have said it's Halloween's Carpenter back to doing what he does best. Like, you got The Shape, you got Christine, and just like in Halloween, there's very little gore, there's very little massive body goo. It's all there in the camera eye, and that's just another reason that makes Christine effective in its killings. And the acting is just unbelievable. Arnie's transformation and Dennis's love for his best friend, even when he's in the hospital, they're just there together. And it's an emotional ending with Arnie dying. I really enjoyed going back through Christine. I enjoyed watching the character evolutions and seeing the movie through Carpenter's eye as a filmmaker. Before, in the 80s and 90s, I would watch it just as Christine. And now I'm watching it as John Carpenter's Christine. And it's a completely different view. Knowing his angles and his film stock. Yeah, I know his film stock. In fact, he changed film stock in one scene. In the opening scene, he usually uses Eastman Kodak for that sharp, good picture. In the 1950s scene on the factory, he used Fujifilm, which has a more softer, almost retro look to it, and it gave it, and didn't even need that filter. It just gave it that 50s look. And that was really cool. And that's the ingenuity of John Carpenter. That's his, his knowledge on film and technique is unbelievable. And it's all just from doing. And that's I say it a lot, but that's cool. John Carpenter is just cool. He's a cool guy. John Carpenter is a cool guy. Well, I hope you enjoyed revisiting this movie with me. And if you haven't yet, I recommend that you be so kind to hit the like button. It makes us look good on YouTube, and it also shows the old YouTube algorithm that we exist and doing our thing, and people are enjoying it. Also, if you haven't, it would be super cool if you hit that subscribe button, so you don't miss out on these videos and the videos we make here all the time. Plus, if you like hearing a bunch of silly cinephiles talk about movies all the time, we'd love it if you checked out the actual Cinemadness podcast. You can see it right here. Well, you can hear it right here on YouTube, but it's also on pretty much all podcast platforms. This is kind of more of a raw video. I'm getting more doing the raw than scripted videos all the time. And I enjoy it more because it just gives me a chance to ramble on about things that I'm passionate about. But I'm talking about the actual podcast right now. So check out the podcast on all podcast platforms. Also on YouTube, at least the current version of the podcast is on YouTube. We also have our quarantine year. Was it years or years? It was 2020 through 2021. Where we did all Zoom, and those are on there as well. I mean, check it out. Check out the channel. It's cool. And again, thank you for joining me for Carpentober 2022. I will see you next week. And don't forget, always celebrate cinema.